I'll tell you a little story. I was at a conference a few years ago talking about the link between morality and human well-being, as I'm going to tonight. And I said something that I thought would be quite uncontroversial in this context. I said, listen, we know that morality relates to human well-being. We know that human well-being relates to the facts that allow mind to emerge in the brain, and so it's constrained by truth claims in some sense. And therefore we know that certain cultures are wrong about how to maximize human well-being, and therefore they're wrong in terms of what they value. And I cited as an example life for women, especially under the Taliban. It seemed to me their violent misogyny and religious lunacy was a pretty obvious context in which people, especially women, were not thriving. Now, it turns out to denigrate the Taliban at a scientific conference is to court controversy. And so after I spoke, another speaker came up to me and said, well, how could you ever say that the compulsory veiling of women is wrong from the point of view of science? And I said, well, okay, the moment you link questions of right and wrong to questions of human well-being, then it seems pretty clear that forcing half the population to live in cloth bags and beating them or killing them when they try to get out is not a way of maximizing well-being, and therefore not a good practice. And she said, well, that's just your opinion. I said, okay, well, let's just make it easier. Let's imagine we found a culture that was removing the eyeballs of every third child. Okay, would you then agree that we had found a culture that was not perfectly maximizing human well-being? And she said, it would depend on why they were doing it. Okay. So that after I picked my jaw back up off the floor, I said, okay, let's say they're doing it for religious reasons. Let's say they have a scripture which says every third should walk in darkness or some such nonsense. Okay. And you'll be pleased or horrified to know that she just bit the bullet here and said, then you could never say that they were wrong. Okay. Now this was a woman who has a background in science and philosophy. She's now on the President's Council for Bioethics. She's one of 13 people advising our President on all of the issues related to progress in medicine and life science generally. She had just delivered a totally lucid lecture on the moral implications as she saw them for the use of neuroscience in our courts. She was very worried that we have been developing lie detection technology and that we are using this on captured terrorists. And she viewed this as an invasion of cognitive liberty. Okay, so on the one hand, her moral scruples were really finely calibrated to our own possible missteps, in this case in our war on terror. But she was rather sanguine about the ritual enucleation of children, and it seemed to me terrifyingly detached from the very real suffering of millions of women in Afghanistan at this moment. So this kind of impossible juxtaposition of views is something I'm encountering a lot now among disproportionately well-educated and liberal people. So it's something we have to grapple with.